Welcome to East by West Farms, where we grow what we eat and we eat what we grow. Today we're gonna see what survived the epic cold snap of 2024. "2024 started with a cold front coming through the whole US. Down here in north central Texas, we got our share of cold freezing temperatures. It's been about a week where it's below 0 degrees centigrade, which is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Went down to minus 11 centigrade, which I believe is something like 20 Fahrenheit. Fortunately, the weather's warming up a little bit. Tomorrow the weather is supposed to be warmer. We will actually get some rain. I've been trying to protect some of the vegetables against the cold by putting tarps on top of them. So I covered maybe a third of the garden, probably a little bit less than that. Today I will remove the tarp. There are two reasons for that. Number one, if I have the tarp on the vegetables too long, they don't get any sunlight, so they're gonna die. The second reason is that it's gonna rain and the plants really need rain. I will compare the vegetables that were under the tarp with the vegetables that were out here in the open and see if it made any difference. So when this cold snap came last week, I took the tarp from the old cheap greenhouse that died on us and put it over the vegetables. I weighted down the tarp with some soil. We have these crazy winds here. Last time I did something like that, the wind blew away the tarp. This time it worked all right. It's a bit of a mess because I've got all the soil on the tarp now. So let me remove this tarp and see what's still alive under the tarp. So the tarp is off. Now let's compare the vegetable that was not under the tarp with the vegetable that was under the tarp. Let me first look at the larvae, which is radish, Daikon radish. So this larvae here, it's been outside the tarp, it's been on the north side, so the cold wind comes from north, and that one looks pretty bad. We've got a lot of wilting on the leaves. Might recover. There's some green leaves down here in the bottom. Oh no, this actually is arugula. So the arugula looks somewhat okay. The radish, kind of soft to the touch. So that one is probably not gonna survive. That doesn't feel right. Here's the Daikon radish that was under the tarp. And I do see some wilting, of course, right here, but altogether the leaves look a lot better. There's some new growth coming up from the crown. The radish is hard to the touch, so that one did not get damaged in the frost. For that Daikon radish, that made a huge difference. That one might survive when it rains tomorrow or tonight and the temperatures get a little bit higher. That one might keep growing. I've got a big arugula plant here. That one was under the tarp. This arugula plant is fantastic. The top kind of bent down a little bit. That might have been because the tarp was on top of it. Other than that, it looks really nice and healthy. And I'm gonna have a nice meal tonight of fresh arugula leaves. So when looking at the lob and the arugula, you could argue I'm comparing a plant that was exposed to the full force of the cold north wind, with something that was protected under the tarp. So maybe it wasn't a tarp, but it was just a protection against the wind. So here's another plant that's a fava bean. That plant here was outside the tarp. Still okay. I think it will come back if we have some decent roots. Maybe a little bit less than a meter, 1.5 feet away from the previous plant. I have this fava bean that was under the tarp and that one has as good as no damage. When we have the rain and warmer temperatures tomorrow, that plant will grow and flower and recover very quickly. The next plant I want to look at is white cabbage. That's some form of cabbage that you use to make kimchi, for example. Now that one is the one that was outside of the tarp. That is completely desiccated and will be compost. There's nothing left of it. And here's the same cabbage that was under the tarp. It is not all that happy. There's some damage to the leaves where it touched the tarp. I think that just didn't survive. Other than that, it looks pretty good. It's healthy, it's still growing. The last vegetable I want to look at today are mustard leaves. Now this is a mustard leaf that's been outside. It's been somewhat protected from the wind, but there was no tarp on top of it. And you can see there are these white spots, so this leaf is not edible anymore. Looking down into the crown, there is some new shoots already, so that vegetable is super resilient. Here's a mustard leaf plant that was under the tarp. That one is sprouting again. We do have a few leaves that got this white spot, so not a huge difference to the mustard leaf under the tarp. So we had this terrible cold snap here in north central Texas. We had temperatures that were way below freezing. I covered part of the garden with a tarp and most of the garden I didn't. I see a significant difference between the places that were covered with the tarp and the ones without. Partially that's due to the temperature and partially due to the fact that the tarp protected the vegetables from the cold northern wind. So is it worth protecting the garden when it goes down to -10 degrees centigrade? It's a lot of work to get the tarp on. Now, if you have nice rows, then that makes it a lot easier. What we are doing here, we have the things growing naturally where they want to grow. The idea of our garden is that we have a food forest that basically supports itself eventually. If you have that kind of garden where things are messy, not in neat little rows, then it becomes a much more of a hassle to get a tarp on. So is it worth it? It certainly makes a difference. I wouldn't spend a huge amount of time in covering everything with a tarp. If things want to grow, they will grow. If we have a really deep freeze, like 2 or 3 years ago, the tarp wouldn't make a huge difference either. The best thing, in my opinion, is to plant vegetables that can withstand the cold. Mustard leaves, they are very cold resistant. The Daikon radish are okay. The white cabbage is less cold resistance. We've got 2 or 3 days of rain. I want to have enough green leaves for my dinner. And I just cut some of the leaves off and put them in the bucket. Nothing beats super fresh leafy vegetables from the own garden that are grown organically without fertilizer. Hey, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. I'm always happy to see if somebody gives us some feedback, comments, or suggestions. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comment section below. And if you hit the subscribe button, you get a notification every time we publish a new video.